notepad.
I agree. Today is a note-taking type day, and whether you do that tonight or you watch the replay and take notes then, but there's probably going to be some new novel concepts. And really, tomorrow when we go into the roadmap on day 3, where we're giving actual strategies, you're going to want to understand the science so that you have the buy-in of why it's important and why it matters. So today we're
That is
really
true.
laying the
And,
framework.
and actually, it may be easier not to try and take notes in the live and watch the playback where you can stop and start it and take notes in
Yeah,
that
I'm
manner.
curious. We are going to get started in a second, but anybody check their email today and get the replay? And I just am curious, was there any issues? If anybody actually hit play on it, because embedding video was a new thing I'm doing. So I wanted to make sure that the replay was able to be played and it had all of the components. So if anybody just wants to pop in, it was good. Okay, perfect. Yay. All right.
And I saw Kristen say, "You slept in?" question mark. Accidentally, I slept till, was it 6:10? Something like that, 6:15. Yes, so I did actually sleep into 6:15. Yes.
Started, you know how that starts the day when you wake up late.
Immediately followed by a phone call from the emergency room about a patient from somewhere else who showed up in our ER with a problem. So yeah, it was a nice relaxing morning.
All right, well, we are ready to dive in. I am going to
Yeah,
just
7:01.
kind of
Welcome
manage my
everybody.
chat here. All right, so welcome back to day number 2 of the Roadmap to Success Challenge. As I will do in the beginning of every day this week, I want to get grounded and mentally present, and encourage you to do the same. So anyone who wishes to do it with me, let's begin by just closing our eyes, putting our hand over our chest, over our heart, as they call it in yogi, heart center, and taking a nice deep breath in through your nose. And let it out with a sigh. Awesome. One more time. Doesn't that feel good? All right. So today I have my esteemed colleague. He is my colleague. He also is my husband, Dr. Marema. Yay. So Bob is a big part of not only why we're here in the online coaching space, but because of his lifelong vision of the success elements for the bariatric patient, but he's also an integral part of our coaching that we provide in the bariatric success method. So I'm going to turn it over to him and be the silent one today.
That's unusual.
I know. I'm giving you the floor, my dear.
All right. So hello, everyone. As Whitney said in the introduction, I'm Bob Marema. I'm a bariatric surgeon and a bariatric lifestyle coach. I'm happy to be sharing this time with you. And certainly it's one of my favorite things to do is find things that inspire me. I know for me that excitement means being inspired by something. And so, of course, I would make it my professional mission to inspire others. So I hope everyone really enjoyed getting a little inspiration yesterday into the why change is necessary for you. And I hope you believe that change is possible for you. Whitney and I both 100% believe that it is possible for every single one of you. Because you're here, and that means it matters to you. And anything that matters to you is capable of creating change in you. I hope you remember from yesterday when Whitney laid down the 5 foundational pillars for transformation, which included self-belief, a roadmap, new habits and accountability, community, and of course, as you know, her favorite, why. Today, day 2, is one of the days that will solidify your ability to move forward because my goal is to prove to you that you haven't failed. You just haven't. You may have been mediocre, but you haven't failed. You've done your best with what you knew, that knowledge base that you were given, that you had up until now. And since the number one foundational pillar is self-belief, today I want to prove to you that if you are lacking self-belief because you had the belief that you couldn't or you wouldn't fail bariatric surgery, then I want to show you that what you didn't actually fail is because you weren't given the proper roadmap to get beyond mediocrity. Mediocre success is so easy to achieve because it's average. And in so many ways, while you never did it perfectly, because no one ever does, you can let yourself off the hook of being some epic failure when it comes to bariatric surgical success. So today we're going to talk about science. You should know that the published statistics regarding expected average weight loss with surgery are on the slide. Let's start there. Chances are good that you in no way failed. You might have had an expected result. Type yes if it would make you feel better to know that your result was typical. The expected result from bariatric surgery is a weight loss of 50 to 60% of excess weight. So just for math's sake, let's define excess weight. Excess weight was your starting weight minus your ideal weight by chart for your height. The delta or difference between the two will give you a number. So for easy math, let's just say that your excess weight was 100 pounds. Of course, that means, maybe your ideal weight was listed at 140 and you came in weighing 240. That difference, 100 pounds, is what you were hoping to lose. But if you lost just 50 to 60% of it, which is the average expected weight loss, then having a 50-pound weight loss would have been expected. Then having ended up with a 50-pound excess weight still present is also as expected. To further this understanding of expected results, it's also published that approximately 30% of people will regain at least 25% of their weight. So the same person who needed to lose 100, lost 50, then regained 25, that's expected. That's average. And that doesn't sound great if in the beginning you felt like that's where, that you wanted to lose 75 to 100 pounds, but that's where you're at. I mean, if at the end of your journey, your net weight loss was only 25 pounds after some regain, that hardly seems worth it, does it? I agree with you. It doesn't feel worth it. It is for this exact reason that we are very clear with incoming patients electing to have surgery about their expectations. We have to manage those. They become fully aware that the surgery is responsible for maybe half of their success, and the other half is due to their effort, what they do with it. It's our responsibility to teach them to the best of our knowledge, which is appropriate. What is appropriate lifestyle choices, dietary selections, and all the other variables that go into a health-seeking lifestyle that promotes 100% weight loss, or at least as very close to that 100% as possible, and then how to maintain that. As you and I know, it's not an easy task, but it is part of our disease management responsibility. I want you to know, and I want you to hear me say this because I'm passionate about what I'm about to say. It is okay to be happy that you've lost some weight, but it's also okay to still want more. It's okay. Actually, it's great, in fact, to have ambitious goals. Please step out of your comfort zone for a minute and type in the chat box, what is your goal weight for yourself? What do you actually want to weigh?
It feels good to just put it out there.
It does. Not what your
'Cause-
surgeon told
yeah.
you, not what your friend told you should weigh, but what do you actually want to weigh? I'd love for you to claim that number and put it into the universe.
Yeah, we see a lot of between 140s and 160, 170s.
Yeah, I love
Common
it. That's
answers.
amazing. That's what you need to do. You need to claim your truth and put your desires out into the world, we don't have to be afraid to claim our desires. In fact, claiming them makes them much more likely to come to fruition. What will it take to get you from where you are now to that weight? Good question, right? And equally important as the scale is, what will it take to get you feeling both physically and emotionally better than you have in years? I'm talking about energy all day with no afternoon crash. I'm talking about decreased or absent joint pain, clear thoughts and focus, and a sense of well-being, a sense of inner peace and calm. All of that is what we are here to figure out, because all of these go together. It's very difficult to have one without the other, and even more difficult to maintain them. So if we have to establish the expected or average weight loss as approximately half of the total excess, with just the restriction that is forced on us by surgery, I'm here to tell you that the average person does not aggressively exercise or follow a metabolic eating plan. So the real question then is, what will it take to get above average results? Well, the simple answer is it will take above average actions and above average habits. I'm talking about not just eating less. I'm talking about slowly but surely becoming a health and wellness seeker. Health and wellness seekers generally make good choices, not just because it helps them maintain a number on the scale, but because it is part of their identity. They know that they feel better physically, emotionally, and spiritually when they give their body what it needs to run efficiently. They treat their body more like a gift than something to be punished or abused.
Well, true.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Now I know that putting your trust in a lifestyle plan and taking consistent, imperfect action towards that plan each and every day is overwhelming to think about. That's why in an ideal situation, you have a tremendous amount of support around you to help you implement and continue forward with these big actions, even when it's hard. Doing this will require leaving all of the negative sabotaging talk at the door and just doing it.
Just do it.
It means turning to your mentors for help when something isn't working well. It means leaning on your community when you're feeling exhausted and defeated, and going back to your why over and over again. Oh, wait, there's that why again. Going back to it over and over again in order to remind you why quitting is just simply not an option. It means identifying as someone who is not a quitter, who is stronger than that old version of yourself, and someone who is excited about the person you are becoming. Above average results require above average action. So please type in the chat box so I know you really heard what I just said, that you're really absorbing and taking this and internalizing it. Just type above average action, or I know you're with me, something like that, okay? I want to hear it.
Above average action.
All right, well, we at least got one person to say it. There we come.
I mean, nobody really wants to be average.
No, and going into this process, everybody who I talk to before surgery, they say things like, I'm going to be your best patient ever.
Yeah.
I am not an average person. I always outperform the average. They say things like that, and then they slowly but surely slip back into that mediocrity situation. So we really want to push you to think outside of where you've been.
It's funny, and I'll probably talk about this again in one of my future talks this week, but I said this to two different people in the office today, and because it was told to me from a coach of mine, and I don't know if it challenged me or what, but we've known this as professionals. We're taught this in school, that there's an 80-20 rule when it comes to being really able to influence people's behaviors. 80% of people will not do what they're asked to do or advised to do, and only 20% of people will. And it's really that 20% of people who go above and beyond just the normal expected actions, right? So, and it makes sense. And so, of course, when I heard that told to me, said, "Oh my God, like I don't want to be one of the 80%. That's terrible. I've got to outperform." But it is probably true across the board. And so above average action, I'm glad that you're all with us typing.
All right. So what I've covered so far today is number one, you haven't failed. You likely got close to an average result, so you can let go of the false belief in the identity as the F word, failure. Number two, above average results will require above average action. And number three, bringing in the foundational habits we know that we will need. They are the following: self-belief, a proven roadmap for success, action to develop new habits, and having accountability to make them stick, and a community of like-minded people with a firm connection to your why.
Kristen says she loves her why and she owns it. Awesome.
So let's move forward. And today I really need to establish some science. So I need to teach you about how weight loss happens and how our bodies respond to diets and weight loss. There are some key pieces that you will need to understand that will really allow you to shift your mindset from your current beliefs of what a diet for weight loss is to what the science tells us. I am providing proof today, proof of what doesn't work and why, proof of what does work and why. My goal for today is to dispel myths with clear proof concepts that will show you why what you have been trying isn't working. There is a reason why what you're trying isn't working, and I want you to know those reasons. I know that if you understand the science behind our logic, then you can use that logic to get past the emotions involved in trying something different. Remember on day one when Whitney said that in order to take action, we need to include both the logic and the emotional brain? Well, type logic or emotion in the chat box to tell us which one you use more in making decisions. Are you a logical thinker or an emotional thinker?
So logical is like you have to analyze all sides, the pros and the cons, and the one with the most tallies wins. And the emotional is like what feels right in the gut. You make a quick decision because you just
we got like a 2-to-1 emotional to logical going right now.
Yeah.
In the people.
How about y'all live? Use your chat box, y'all.
Yeah, on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're watching, but maybe they're watching and cooking dinner at the same time.
All right, let's move on here. So for those of you who need logic and rational to move forward with taking a new path, let's begin our logic session now, because today is a lot more about logic than it is about emotional. We've heard our entire lives that achieving weight loss is simple, right? It's a math equation, they say, calories in versus calories out. If we take in less than we expend, then we get weight loss. And this is a very old theory, and in some respects it is true. It follows the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. But there's a lot more to it than that. There is science and physiology at work here, and you have to understand both. So because it very much applies to you and your current and future weight loss efforts, we're going to move forward with teaching you something about the metabolic set point theory and how that is influencing your weight loss efforts after bariatric surgery. I'm about to share with you something that makes so much logical sense you won't believe you never heard it before. Pay attention and pretend you're in school for a little while. When we reduce calories by eating less of any and all food, and we do this for a period of time longer than a few weeks, our survival DNA programming kicks in. You see, back in caveman times when food wasn't around, and by the way, we're a little bit distant from caveman times, but just listen to me for a minute. Back in caveman times when food wasn't around like during winter time or during a drought. We needed a mechanism to keep us from dying in those times. So our very intelligent bodies have programming built in to keep us from dying when food is scarce. What happens on a physiological level is that after a few weeks of sustained calorie restriction, and by the way, today it's very hard to find a famine that affects us. It's called a diet, okay? So when we're dieting and reducing calories, and we sustain this for a while, more than a few weeks, this mechanism sets in and says, wait a minute, we are burning way more than we are taking in. We need to fix that. Let's force the calorie expenditure, otherwise known as metabolism, to lower down, okay? Lower down, so we're burning less calories. And that's how we don't starve and die. The body doesn't know it's not at risk of dying, but what happens after a prolonged period of reducing calories is the body downregulates your metabolism to match what you're bringing in. Okay? And voila, problem solved. We don't starve and die. Hallelujah, right? Except when we're trying to lose the darn weight. So guess what else we won't do? We won't lose the weight on the diet anymore, okay? So this process in our bodies is called metabolic reset. And this is based on the metabolic set point theory.
I also hear it called metabolic adaptation.
Another useful terminology, but they all mean the same darn thing. So if any of you have had bariatric surgery, and hopefully it's all of you, then you've gone through this metabolic reset, because bariatric surgery is the ultimate diet, right? Remember back to those early days when we were getting only 2 ounces of food at a time, maybe even less. You were getting 500 to 600 calories in a day, and you felt like, I can't cram another calorie in. Of course, we lost weight. Why? Because our metabolism was higher prior to surgery, and then all of a sudden we're taking in 500 to 600 calories, and heck yeah, you're losing weight. But eventually, somewhere between 4 and 7 months after that operation, well, you tell me what happened. About 4 to 7 months after surgery, type it in the chat box and just tell me. And I'm leaning forward to read the chats. Just got stuck, plateau, hit the wall. We see these things written, but emotionally, how did that feel?
Yeah.
Stay it the same way. You felt deprived. Weight loss stopped. You felt like, what the heck?
Yes,
Even
because
this thing has stopped working.
And it doesn't make sense to our logical brains, because we say to ourselves, but I'm eating so much less than I used to. But the point is, to your body, it does not know that. It's not true to your body anymore.
That's right. So, I mean, I got to frankly ask you at that point, were you scared? Did you feel like, oh my God, this thing isn't going to work? Very discouraged, frustrated. I felt like I didn't succeed. Exactly. So light bulbs should be going off in your head that, hey, wait a second. These people are actually describing exactly what happened to me. And oh my God, they know this, but nobody else told me this. I promise you there is hope out there, because this is precisely what we are going to talk about next, okay? I felt like I was destined to be overweight forever, despite surgery.
Nancy said something I can relate to is, like, I can't believe I did this to my body. I can't believe I did this to myself.
Right. I had this major surgery,
Yeah.
altered my gut, everything else, and now this isn't working too. Okay, so it's the whole reason that right now you are frustrated, feeling stuck, trying this or that and getting nowhere, because what you are trying isn't taking into account the scientifically proven metabolic set point theory. And we're going to teach you about that right now. So I want to give you some hope now that there is a way to lose weight, even with the newly lowered and reset metabolism. And it involves another survival mechanism that we have built into our DNA to prevent starvation. You see, we are working with our genes and our physiology here, not trying a new TikTok fad. No, we are not. So this is mechanism. This is called the burn fat for energy theory. All right. Does anyone like the concept of burning fat? Hey, huh? How about telling me you do? Our bodies depend upon sugar for energy, glucose. In medicine, we call it glucose, okay? Every cell in our body uses it. Where do we get glucose from? Does anybody know? Type it in the chat. Tell me where we get glucose from. I feel like the biology teacher right now, making sure that you're all with me. Is anybody with me? Anybody get it? Wake up, kids.
Sugar. Okay. Yeah. From the pancreas, right? Sugar. Okay.
Well,
yeah.
It doesn't exactly come from the pancreas, but the hormone that helps us manage it comes from the pancreas. So good knowledge. Correct. We get it from our food. We especially get glucose from foods that contain sugar or starch. Starch is the quickly converted to sugar in the body. A starchy food or a Milky Way is the same thing as far as our body knows. It doesn't really know the difference. It just knows it's getting sugar. And this is especially true for somebody who's had bariatric surgery, because we sort of have a fast track to sugar absorption. As a matter of fact, that's for many of us why we are familiar with the dumping syndrome, because that's when sugar is fast tracked into us. So back to our caveman days, if food wasn't plentiful, we had two mechanisms to prevent us from starving to death. You all know the first one, that's the metabolic set point theory. The second mechanism is the burn fat for fuel theory. I made that name up, but it works because it fits what we're going to be talking about, okay? When food isn't being taken in to get glucose, our bodies turn on a mechanism that allows us to take fat, melt it, and convert it to glucose in order to feed the cells in our body. We are literally making sugar from our fat. Biochemically, this process is called gluconeogenesis. Gluco is glucose, and neogenesis is new formation. So new formation of glucose, gluconeogenesis. In this scenario, as long as we have some fat on our body, we can survive without food. Hibernating bears use this process all the time. They get fat on the berries and the salmon and whatever else they're eating in summer and fall, and then they're getting ready to hibernate, where they then will burn their fat, convert it to sugar, and survive during the winter months. They do get skinny, but they don't die. For us in modern times, when there is literally never a shortage of available food, we can use this burn fat for fuel method, not for survival, well, maybe indirectly, but for weight loss, right? Even with a lowered metabolism or a reset metabolism, we can achieve this. So what I'm telling you is that if you don't give your body sugar or starch for glucose, your fat will then be converted to sugar to use in its place. We are using our own body's infinite wisdom in our favor for weight loss. It's kind of a payback for doing us dirty by resetting our metabolism. I kind of like that kind of approach, right? But wait, there's more. When we eat sugar and/or starchy carbohydrates, something else happens that impedes our weight loss efforts. Let me explain this whole thing right now. Every time we eat, but especially when we eat sugar and starch, our body's blood sugar rises, our blood glucose. The sugar goes from our stomach to the intestines and into the bloodstream. Now it needs to go from the blood to the inside of our cells. Insulin is the hormone that makes that happen. our pancreas secretes insulin, and insulin transports the sugar out of the blood and into the cells. The higher the blood sugar, the higher the insulin goes. Now, we absolutely need that process. We can't shut that off. In fact, we would be a type 1 diabetic without that process. But if we understand physiology and we apply it to obesity and our desire to lose weight, we know these important facts that can help or hurt our weight loss efforts.
So Melissa's asking, what if you're diabetic? Well, if you're diabetic, then you're either a type 1, in which case you don't make insulin, and so you have to supplement it, or you're a type 2 where you make insulin, but your cells are resistant to it.
Okay.
So and type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance is a challenge for weight loss.
But let's face it, 30-40% of the patients who have bariatric surgery are type 2 diabetics.
And I would venture to say that 100% of them are insulin resistant. It's part of the metabolic syndrome that we are faced with.
Correct. So while insulin is 100% necessary, it is a hormone that promotes, encourages fat storage, and it blocks fat breakdown. So a biological feedback loop mechanism occurs when glucose and insulin are elevated. It signals to the body to hold on to fat. Why? Because we are being fed sugar. It's not a famine. So we hold on to fat for when we need it. And when the famine comes, we have fat available. Does that make sense to people? If glucose is not available and insulin is not being triggered, that's when we use fat. If glucose is available and insulin is triggered and released to manage that glucose, we block fat breakdown and we hold on to it for later. Okay. So with regard to sugar or glucose and insulin hormone, in someone who is trying to lose fat, you tell me, should we trigger them or should we not trigger them? It's simple, right? We do not want to trigger insulin release by consuming glucose. This is for two reasons. Number one, if we are feeding our bodies glucose, it doesn't need to use fat for fuel. It's getting its fuel from our food. And number two, if we are feeding our bodies glucose, insulin elevates. And when insulin rises, no matter how little we're eating or what medication we are taking, our fat burn is being blocked. Okay? So I presented you with some scientific evidence and proof here of why you had bariatric surgery and stopped losing weight, even though you were still eating less than you were before. And that sucks. Now that you know these things and these physiologic processes are wired into your DNA and we can't change your DNA, it makes total sense to you that, you were confused, you were trying, you were failing diets and spinning, and this should all make sense now. Not trigger. Okay. Essentially, I'm trying to empower you to understand how your body actually works and how to eat and conduct your lifestyle in a way that supports your unique body and your circumstances. But there is more. There is another hormone you may have heard called leptin. Leptin is responsible for, among other things, providing you with a sense or a feeling of being full. Sometimes it's called the food satisfaction hormone. When insulin levels are elevated, leptin is suppressed. Therefore, if we're going to maintain elevated insulin levels through starchy or sugary foods, we are suppressing our ability to feel satisfied or feel full. It will be harder to feel food satisfaction unless we are physically stuffing our stomachs full. Think about that.
Well, that makes sense because it's like, have you ever noticed when you have a Pop-Tart for breakfast, you're starving like 30 to 60 minutes later? versus if you had, an egg.
Have you ever had a Pop-Tart for breakfast? Please.
Saying other people say that.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. And that's actually why, well, I digress for a second, but if you have children and they have exams that day, do not feed them crap Pop-Tarts and breakfast cereals and stuff. You must give them things like eggs and bacon and sausage and things like that. Okay, sorry, I digressed. The solution is not what you think. We have to recognize first and foremost that most bariatric patients are given a diet plan to follow for only the first few months, maybe even up to a year following surgery. Many patients that I speak to that had surgery through another program were given advice such as, oh, everything in moderation, or just, stepwise approach to diet progression that's focused on eating what you can tolerate. Rather than teaching an evidence-based approach focused on weight loss and giving people the lifestyle education tools to teach them how to lose and maintain weight long-term. So what I've found in my experience is that most advice in nutritional counseling is not scientifically based advice for someone who is trying to lose massive amounts of weight and at the same time trying to maintain their metabolism so that they can maintain that weight loss long-term. Most of you can probably attest to the fact that eating anything you can tolerate, just less of it, will only get you so far. It stops working generally around 5 to 7 months after surgery, and then pretty much your weight loss is done. And if you still have 50 or 75 pounds to lose, or even significantly more, you're not in a happy place. So believe it or not, contrary to what we've been told our entire weight loss seeking lives, eating less is not scientifically proven to work after the first few diet attempts. And what are we on? Like number 10, 15, 20? I mean, God knows. I mean, I interviewed about a half a dozen new patients today for potential surgical weight loss, and every one of them could list at least 10 things that they had tried in the past. So let's move on. Let's dive into some common examples of misguided dietary advice that you may have received that is not backed by science. And if you can identify with any one of these, you're in that boat. The most common is that decreasing calories significantly by skipping meals or eating a very low calorie diet is the only way to lose weight. And I'm talking about using shakes, bars, meal replacements for most meals. Another common approach that we see is the low-fat approach. This is another variation of restricting calories, but here it is by using low-fat or fat-free versions of foods. Another misguided plan we see all the time is eating small, frequent meals. They say you're going to, quote, stimulate your metabolism. The last one in this category is using sugar-free everything. Sugar-free drinks, condiments, sauces, dressings, popsicles, jellos. Just remember, we didn't say these won't work at all. We do claim that they won't work long-term for most people who've been obese and dieted through these methods previously multiple times. The reality is for us, they might work for a few months, and then they will simply stop working. And maintaining weight with these approaches is extremely hard. Let's dive into why they don't work, starting with restricting calories through skipping meals.
All right, this is where y'all need to really kind of pay attention, because this is where some of the good info lies.
Really? Okay, thanks. Restricting calories through skipping meals or eating very small meals or using shakes or bars as meal replacements. This only works for a short time or perhaps not at all. This is if this is the umpteenth time you've dieted this way, because each time we do this for any length of time, greater than a few weeks, our body downregulates our metabolism again in efforts to avoid starvation. This means we burn even less and less calories in a day. Eventually, our calorie burn becomes equal to our calorie intake, which is already significantly reduced. To continue to lose weight, we would need to significantly cut calories again to a point where, frankly, it's impossible and unhealthy to eat so few calories. This is where most bariatric patients find themselves, with a decreased metabolism, eating less than before, and not losing weight. And we can't forget to mention that in this diet approach, we are not giving our bodies the amount and diversity of nutrients required to run our bodies efficiently, and to not signal to the body that we are in danger. When the body senses danger, it prioritizes survival and will hold on to fat, not get rid of it. And there's a whole bunch of hormonal responses that that cause that to happen. How about the low-fat approach? Low-fat diets seen in programs, I hate to name them, but you know what they are, where we are substituting carbohydrates for fat and allowing simple starches like bread, pretzels, popcorn, rice cakes. These foods cause a spike in glucose similar to a candy bar, especially in a bariatric patient. And then insulin rises to deal with the blood glucose. We've already talked about what insulin does. It inhibits lipolysis or fat breakdown. So not only is this unlikely to burn fat, but as a bariatric patient, the rise and fall of blood glucose is much higher and faster, and the fall much quicker and lower than someone without surgical alteration of their anatomy. This causes hanger or shakiness and likely results in eating more sugar or starch. You ever felt that way? I'll bet you have. And add to this, low-fat diets lack staying power and result in being hungry 1 to 2 hours after you just ate. Fat in the diet keeps us feeling fuller longer. Healthy fat is a good thing. The next one we're going to talk about, the common belief that eating small, frequent meals is the way to go. Many bariatric patients are taught this, and in part, this is because we simply can't eat enough at one time early after surgery. Remember in the beginning when you could only tolerate a very small amount? But as we mature in our bariatric journey, this becomes no longer relevant. Hear me out here. This is a simple yet important concept. Every time we eat, yes, even when we eat just protein, our blood sugar rises some. When our blood sugar rises, insulin rises to manage that sugar and take it out of the blood and put it into our cells for energy. When we eat frequent small meals, or you can't help snack, then you end up in a rise and fall of your blood sugar and your insulin level all damn day. And so what does that do? All damn day, you're inhibiting breakdown of fat. It's no wonder you're getting nowhere. Even if you're eating perfect types of food, but you're doing it all day long, you never let the insulin stay low enough for long enough to attack those fat cells and lose weight. Let's go to sugar-free everything. That's our last myth to bust, that we should eat sugar-free everything. While we agree that high sugar diets are not going to promote weight loss, the sugar-free culture has forced the addition of harmful artificial sweeteners and preservatives and chemicals in order to make these highly processed foods taste good to our sweet addicted brains. The issue here is these chemicals confuse the body. That's right, they confuse the body. Scary. It doesn't know if we're eating food or poison. These chemicals are well known to induce inflammation in the body, and these products then produce fat storage, not fat loss. Why? Because the body needs to put these
Toxins.
potential poisons or toxins somewhere, and so it wraps them in fat and stores them away in fat cells.
Yeah, fat stores are a major source of toxin storage.
Of toxin release in the body, right? So studies clearly demonstrate that the insulin glucose spike associated with consuming these sugar substitutes is only slightly less than real sugar. Meanwhile, they're training us to prefer very sweet things and creating a cycle of carb sugar craving and inflammation. The evidence is also clear that these chemical artificial sweeteners kill off healthy gut bacteria. And guess what? There is a very strong link between a lack of healthy gut bacteria and obesity. I know this is true on a professional level, and I could tell you stories of high blood sugar levels after consuming protein shakes made with sucralose, but I also know it personally. This was the very first change I made. I gave up, for me, it was Splenda, but when I committed to following the bariatric success method, it had a huge benefit to both decreasing my level of inflammation and pain. and improving my weight loss efforts.
Mm.
So I hope by now you're beginning to understand the important concepts of why what you've been doing hasn't been working and why what we eat matters for both weight loss and as well as many other things. If we're trying to lose 10 pounds, heck, you might be able to get away with some of these methods, but this is not the case for most of us. We're looking to lose very significant amounts of weight. I hope you're beginning to have some light bulbs go off in this lecture. Let me summarize all of this because we've had a few people enter a little later than anticipated. So the root cause of weight gain and failure to continue to lose weight after the period of initial weight loss following surgery is due to number one, blood sugar and insulin elevations, which inhibit fat breakdown and promote hunger and cravings. And number two, decreased metabolism due to severe calorie restriction for prolonged periods of time, making it difficult to continue to lose weight or maintain that weight loss. When we eat foods that spike our blood sugar and consequently our insulin levels, we don't use fat for energy. We use the sugar we just ate. Furthermore, by repeatedly and severely decreasing calorie intake, our daily calorie burn, known as our metabolism, decreases. When we burn only 800 calories in a day, it's very hard to cut calories lower in order to lose, even with surgery. There has to be a better way, and there is.
All right, so I'm gonna answer a couple questions quickly. So Melissa wants to know about insulin resistance and how do you fix it? And I think previously she mentioned something about being on insulin. So I would say that, yeah, I mean, the key in insulin resistance is basically, what our method is based on, because obesity is a metabolic problem and it is tied in and highly connected with insulin resistance. Now, somebody who has diabetes, well, we know that they have insulin resistance and it's probably significant. So therefore, following what we're teaching in terms of the diet, what to eat and when to eat, is all the more important, because you have to teach your body to become metabolically flexible. It's not going to want to turn to fat for fuel very easily. You're going to have to force it into it. But yes, it's key, because especially if we're giving our body insulin from injections, that is going to inhibit weight loss. It's going to be very difficult. So we've got to take down our insulin requirements by working on that insulin resistance so that we can, start to see better and better results. And then somebody else asked about, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, just simply that metabolic flexibility is also built into our DNA, and we have the ability to become metabolically flexible, but it has to be carefully managed, particularly in someone who's on insulin injections.
Mm-hmm.
So you may need some special, continuous glucose monitoring or things like that. But, there are ways that this can be managed. And the more perfect or the more imperfectly perfect that you approach the dietary regimen, the less insulin you will require, and therefore you're going to be in a space that allows you to lose weight, even though it seems impossible where you're at right now.
Yes, and somebody else asked about stevia. Yeah, so stevia is, one of, a more natural substance. So now it's also newer, right? It's newer to the market. So who knows what we'll find out? I mean, what sucralose has been popular for like 10, 15 years by now. And we're just now starting to see the data that's very clear that it was very bad for us. So, and it's still in all of our protein drinks, it's in all of our diet drinks.
And I'm going to guarantee you, as I sit here today, that you're reaching for stevia because you want that uber sweet sensation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a habit.
And it is habitual. And I thought I would never get away from sweeteners. I now have my tea, my coffee. I have everything without any sweetener. And I've come to enjoy it. It's a different flavor. It's not looking for that sweet. You're looking for the actual flavors that those products were intended to provide.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get into kind of some more specifics when we kind of dive into the roadmap tomorrow. But I would say that
monk fruit and stevia are very similar.
I would say too that, from our experience with the clients that we work with, that pretty much across the board, they find that as they're, experimenting and we're kind of taking some of this stuff out and watching to see what happens, that they find that their cravings overall decrease significantly, and so does their inflammation and pain. So generally, the people that we work with end up feeling like they're better without it completely. But it, obviously, sometimes we need a bridge to get there, right?
So somebody else asked about postmenopausal, and I think we can touch on that real quickly. Your metabolism does seem to decrease in the postmenopausal era
mainly
as well.
because estrogen is helps us manage our blood glucose, and so without it, or with a decrease in it, then we have a harder time. So yes, what we got away with eating when we were premenopausal, we can't get away with.
Right, and that's just true. I mean, whoops, for even guys too. That's kind of, I mean, we have lowering testosterone levels and whatnot, and that affects that as well.
And what can we do to increase our metabolism? Well, we can basically, increasing our calorie burn is done by building muscle, is the primary way that's done.
Right.
But we certainly don't want to crash it even more by continuing to cut calories back and back and back, thinking that's the way to lose weight, because there are other options that don't do that. All right, so let's go ahead and move on.
Let's just talk for a second. We have to learn how to eat in a way that balances our blood sugar and our insulin and our leptin. And that is the key to success. And we have to know the lifestyle factors that affect and impact these hormones. And so we have to make sure that our lifestyle choices don't defeat the actual operation we had. And in some respects, that's exactly where we find ourselves if we don't make transformational changes to our lifestyle from the beginning. But you want the good news? You can make those transformative changes at any point after surgery, even 20 years later.
You did.
I did. So there's been a lot of information today that we've been diving into, and tomorrow is going to be even more information. Day 3, Whitney's coming back.
That's tomorrow.
That is tomorrow. And so we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I know you're going to sit on the edge of your seat, saying, wait, give me more.
Mm-hmm.
That's tomorrow. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you then.
All right. I'm glad that you all, it really did excite me yesterday. I had trouble sleeping, actually, which is never a thing for me, falling asleep. But, it really just kind of being with y'all and, giving our knowledge and what we know to others to hopefully do something with it. It's exciting for us too. So thank you all for your time, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same place.
And you will be sending out tomorrow morning. You'll be sending out a replay of today.
Yep.
And so that'll be available. And there we go.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.